Hello and welcome to the March 13th edition of This Week in South Carolina in Session. I'm Gavin Jackson outside the State House here in Columbia. Well, it is budget week and the House of Representatives has been certainly busy dealing with the budget so far. They came in on Monday and deliberated until the evening on Monday, and they are also still here right now on Tuesday taking up the $8.2 billion operating fund, general operating fund budget here in the State House. Now that budget does fund the state government throughout the year, with the budget year which takes effect July 1st. And with that, there comes some tense political exchanges, as you can imagine, on the House floor. We've seen some lawmakers attempting to amend the budget that's already made its way through House and Ways Committee to the House floor. So some folks see this as a prime opportunity to start taking up some political agendas and trying to push their way through. Now we have some highlights for you of how that worked out for some folks on the House floor today. Now switching gears to the Senate, we saw Senate Judiciary Committee pass out a bill that would make it a crime to threaten violence in schools with a lethal weapon. Now, you remember us talking about that bill in the past, and so we have some details for you about that bill, as well as another bill that moved its way out of the Senate today that got third reading, a bill from Senator Katrina Shealy, that creates a child advocacy department within the state. So a lot of news happened up here, so let's get right into it right now. Senator Sandy Sinn's bill that would make it a crime to threaten violence at school with a weapon made it out of the Senate Judiciary Committee today. It was filed just under a month ago and has zoomed through the process since there was a need to create the crime and send perpetrators through family court in an attempt to get them mental health counseling services.
There are plenty of laws that would help us if somebody actually threatened to blow up a school with an incendiary device, or if they threatened an individual, like cyberbullying. But there is no law that, or sometimes disturbing the schools is what these kids are arrested for, but there is no law that really hits it dead on point to allow our police officers to go in there and make an arrest with what they feel is a threat to blow up or harm or shoot up or a school with violent weapons. And so this would allow our officers to go in, make a detention, and then determine whether they need to make an arrest and then get these kids, because it's almost always kids who attended that school or still attend the school who do the shooting. So what we would try to do is then get them into the hands of mental health providers or anger management providers and try to prevent awful things like this from happening.
Talonville Republican Representative Jonathan Hill today took to the well multiple times to push for budget amendments that he was trying to get. Talonville Republican Representative Jonathan Hill took to the House well several times today in an attempt to try and amend the budget to get more money for the local government fund. You might have heard of this. It's the local government fund, which helps municipalities and cities across the state deal with funding requirements from the state, these state mandates. It includes state mandated presence of solicitors in their county offices and other requirements from the state that gets pushed down to them. Now this local government fund was severely underfunded following the recession in the early 2000s and has not quite got back up to the funding level it's needed. So far it's underfunded by about $104 million. So Representative Hill took to the well multiple times today, despite the ire of many in his own party, to try and get funding from other programs that he didn't see as vital to be redirected to the local government fund for some of these vital services. Let's see what happened right now with some of these exchanges on the House floor.
And this amendment is the first in a series of amendments, a package, as you will, that I will be bringing today before you for your consideration. Folks, what this is really about is the local government fund, funding the local government fund. If there was ever a year that we could do that, it's this year. We have over $300 million in new recurring dollars. I can't remember a budget year where we've had such a large amount of unused recurring dollars that we had available at our disposal. Guess what, folks? The local government fund is only $104.6 million short in this budget. Blake, if you could put up the slide chart for me. I just want to show you a trend. Over the last decade or so, you can see how the local government fund was cut back hard from the statutorily required funding level of 4.5% of the previous year's budget, and hasn't been restored since, even though revenues and the budget size have been going up steadily. Why have you not used your time to advocate for fully funding it with the resources we have, especially this year when we have a bigger than ever budget surplus?
Well, you get to answer questions. I get to ask them, but I will answer your question.
Mr. Pitts, this is my time at the podium, and, you know, I'm done with this conversation. Thank you.
So you're going to bail?
Representative Mike Pitts gave some perspective on the LGF cuts during the recession.
Mr. Whitmire was on the Law Enforcement Committee with me at that point in time. We cut law enforcement tremendously. We had 11 counties in this state with no DNR law enforcement in it coming out of that recession because of the cuts we had to make. We lost over 200 troopers because of those cuts we had to make. SLED lost entire sections within SLED, which supports, their whole role is to support local law enforcement. I can't think of a single county or municipality that followed our lead and made cuts at the same time. They wanted more money for local government fund as opposed to accepting those cuts. Mr. Hill, that's where the provisos began. Coming out of that, we realized the sustainability of the local government fund and the reasons for it had changed. Originally, the local government fund was put in place to fund mandates sent to them by the state. But the first thing that I heard coming back to us was we need police officers, deputies, and fire trucks. That is not what the local government fund was designed to do. It was not their operational budget.
But Hill was back with more amendments trying to get more money from initiatives like Rural Health, the Arts Commission, and others. That led Florence Republican Philip Lowe to give him some advice of his own.
I understand we have a process here. Part of the process is we don't have to listen to redundant messages over and over. These amendments are attacks on every part of the budget. I would suggest that we not ask questions, let him have his discussion, and vote. And don't waste any more time going through each and every one of these, and I would urge you to do the same. Thank you.
But Representative Jonathan Hill didn't have all the fun on the House floor today. Representative Kirkman Finley, Republican from Columbia, got into it with Beaufort Republican Jeff Bradley over funding for a University of South Carolina teacher program valued at $500,000. Kirkman Finley took offense to how Bradley went about the process, saying he skirted the normal budget process of House Ways and Means Committee to go ahead and upend it and do it on the House floor instead. And let's just say that things didn't work out the way Jeff Bradley wanted to today. Let's take a look.
It is hard for me to understand how an institution that gets close to $300 million directly or indirectly out of this body cannot do this in the existing budget that they have following the existing procedures. Does that make sense?
I'm surprised to hear you say that, understanding the way the entrenched network outside these doors operates.
Help me?
Do what?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the entrenched
So the point is that we tried to run this through the existing budget, and they asked us to put it in this form.
Wait a minute, but who is they?
The representatives for the university.
So let me make sure I understand, Mr. Bradley, because I think this is a very important point. You're aware that Ways and Means had numerous subcommittee hearings where we discussed the university's budget, right?
Yes, sir.
If you look over your left shoulder, I believe you'll see Subcommittee Cole and AJ, who spent long hours pouring through the documents.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
Sure, of course.
So what you're saying is that the lobbyists out in the lobby have asked you to run the entire budgetary process to give them $500,000 that they have excluded the other universities.
And Governor Henry McMaster held a roundtable event today with South Carolina Department of Transportation Secretary Christy Hall and a U.S. Department of Transportation advisor to discuss the future of infrastructure investment in South Carolina. You might recall that President Donald Trump has proposed a $1.5 trillion infrastructure plan and looking at reinvesting in infrastructure across the country over 10 years. Now, this would leverage local investment with private investment and federal dollars. And so this meeting today was just kind of to get the ball rolling and to discuss the possibility of that investment coming to South Carolina in the future. And leaders, including Hall and McMaster, said that the state is well positioned to deal with this should that plan move forward, which is currently in Congress right now being debated and still has yet to really kind of come into fruition. So we have some details from Secretary Hall and from others from this event today.
The plan itself incorporates talking through how we would use $200 billion to drive $1.5 trillion in infrastructure investment that's new money over the course of 10 years. So we also know there's much work to be done, and we have another transportation authorization bill coming up in the next few years, but we're talking new monies and ways we can use this new money to help drive a change in how we do infrastructure.
Well, of course, we have to wait and see what the details of the actual plan is once Congress produces a bill going forward. But certainly, widening of our rural interstates would be something keen on our list to try to advance moving forward. As you know, we currently do not have a widening project planned for Interstate 95. So obviously, we're looking for ways to advance projects along that corridor. Closing the gap between Columbia and the Charleston area as far as widening of that rural section of I-26 would also be something that we would look favorably towards trying to advance as well. So it's, safety, existing interstate widenings, obviously if there's any critical bridge needs that we would have that we're currently not able to fund, we would look for things like that.
And House lawmakers continue to debate the budget Tuesday evening. Meanwhile, Senate lawmakers on a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee looking at nuclear utility reform bills did pass out a major bill passed to them from the House. And that bill would create a consumer advocate for ratepayers within the Attorney General's office. Now, this is a key movement for Senate lawmakers who have been accused of dragging their feet on some of these House bills that have been sent to them in light of the VC Summer nuclear power plant expansion project debacle. So, we remember we had that press conference last week and with House lawmakers calling out these senators for not moving as quickly, and you still see some of these House guys sniping at the senators over their slow movement on places like Twitter and Facebook. So more to come with all that. But like we say here, stick with us throughout the 2018 legislative session as SCE TV brings you live video recaps every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on SCE TV's Facebook page, our YouTube page, and my Twitter account, Gavin Jackson, at 7 p.m. You can also check out the State House Daybook every morning on SCETV.org to find out what's going on and where it's happening up here at the State House. I'm Gavin Jackson for SCE TV here in Columbia.